For this question, we're asked to rearrange this equation to make v the subject. Now, it is worth pointing out that there are lots of approaches you could take to this question, so your final answer might not look like mine, but it could be equivalent to mine. So lots of ways to approach this. Now, the one thing I'm going to do first of all is to eliminate this square root. I'm going to do that by squaring both sides. So I'll get p squared is equal to m squared v squared, and that is all over 1 minus v squared over c squared. I'm now going to eliminate this denominator here by multiplying both sides by that. So p squared, and then we've got 1 minus v squared over c squared. And that is equal to m squared v squared. I'm going to expand this bracket here. So I'm going to get p squared minus p squared v squared over c squared is equal to m squared v squared. I'm now going to gather all the v terms on one side. In other words, I'm going to take this term here. I'm going to eliminate that by adding to both sides. I'm going to add this term to both sides to eliminate. So what I'll have is that p squared is equal to m squared v squared plus p squared v squared over c squared. Now I notice I've got a factor of v squared in both these terms here. So let's factor out the v squared. So we've got p squared is equal to v squared, bracket m squared plus p squared over c squared. Now just to tidy things up a little bit, and you don't have to do this step, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to multiply this term here by c squared over c squared, just so I can get a common denominator. So what I'm going to get is that p squared is equal to v squared, and then in brackets I will have c squared m squared over c squared plus p squared over c squared. And then I can gather these two together and put them as a single fraction. So p squared is equal to v squared. We'll have c squared m squared plus p squared. That's over c squared. The next thing I'm going to do is just flip the whole thing over. So v squared and then bracket c squared m squared plus p squared over c squared is equal to p squared. Now I'm going to eliminate this bracket here. So I'm going to divide both sides by that bracket. So we'll get v squared is equal to p squared, and that is divided by c squared m squared plus p squared. And that is over c squared. Now I'm going to tidy things up a little bit here. We've got this p squared and we're dividing by this. So let me just write this down here. So I'll just put a line here. I'll put a little space in here so you can see what I'm doing. We have p squared, and we are dividing by c squared m squared plus p squared over c squared. And when we're dividing by fractions, the rule is that you change it to a multiplication and flip the second fraction. So c squared over c squared m squared plus p squared. So what that's going to give me is that v squared is equal to the p squared c squared. So this bit here, so p squared multiplied by c squared. And that is over c squared m squared plus p squared. And the last thing to do is to take the square root of both sides. So we have the square root of, let's change this to c squared p squared over c squared m squared plus p squared. If you found this video useful, then remember to give me a quick thumbs up. And if you would like to be notified when I release new videos, then hit that subscribe button and remember to click on the little notification bell.